All right, so today we're going to dive deep into something that, let's be honest, most people don't think is super exciting. Old servers.
Right.
But, we rely on these things every day, right? Whether we realize it or not. And we're going to look at why ignoring them could be a really big risk,
Yeah.
especially for businesses. So our case study today comes from a real-world example of a server meltdown.
Yes, it does.
A Dell PowerEdge T320, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, so let's uncover, I guess, why old servers are kind of like ticking time bombs and what we can learn from this real-life story.
Yeah, and this case study is so interesting because it really highlights those hidden costs
Right.
of keeping these, what we think are cost-effective older
Yeah.
servers around.
Yeah.
We're going to talk all about how a routine update became a total disaster.
All right, so let's set the scene here. What exactly happened with this T320?
So a sysadmin doing like a routine update on this server that's 10 years old, updating the BIOS and the IDRSE, which is the integrated Dell remote access controller,
Uh-huh.
the brains behind remote server management. Seems straightforward, pretty standard procedure.
Yeah, routine.
Totally. But this T320 was already past its end-of-life date.
End of life. Okay.
You might think that EOL just means no new features,
Right.
but it's way more serious than that.
Okay.
It means no manufacturer support, no security patches.
Wow.
So if anything goes wrong, you are on your own.
So it's almost like, you're trying to find a mechanic for a car from, like, the early 2000s.
Exactly.
It's not impossible,
It's
but
going to be hard to find.
hard to find and expensive, yeah.
And probably expensive.
Yeah.
So in this case, the lack of support just turned a simple update into a catastrophe.
Oh, wow.
So update process starts, and then the server's lifecycle controller freezes.
Oh, no.
Black screen. Reboot attempts fail. Even the IDREC, which is usually the lifeline in these situations,
Yeah.
gives up.
So the server's completely bricked, like unusable.
That's right. And, that's the really scary part, is this isn't just some freak accident.
Right.
This is what happens when hardware ages. It becomes more fragile.
Yeah.
It just can't handle modern software and security protocols.
So is it safe to say that this whole T320 situation is kind of like a warning sign, like a canary in a coal mine?
Totally.
That maybe we're ignoring some bigger risks?
Yeah, there's much bigger risks lurking beneath the surface when it comes to relying on these old servers.
Okay, so let's, beyond just failed updates then, like what other kind of risks are we talking about?
Well, we talked about EOL,
Yeah.
and that is really just the tip of the iceberg.
Hmm.
So think about it this way. Let's say you're running a business
Yeah.
and your server crashes, right?
Oh.
The heart of your operations. You call Dell for support. What do you think they're going to say?
I mean, probably not going to be happy news.
No, they're going to be like, sorry, that model's EOL. We can't help you.
Um,
Now you're scrambling to find a solution.
yeah.
Potentially losing hours or even days of productivity.
And that's lost revenue.
Every minute of downtime is money. It's customers getting upset. It's a big problem.
Yeah, for sure. And I imagine those third-party support options, they're not cheap.
Not at all.
Yeah. So that's one thing.
Then you've got an increased risk of hardware failure.
Right.
It's just like an old car, right?
Yeah.
The older it gets,
Sure.
the more likely it is to break down.
Yeah.
We're talking motherboards, RAID cards, power supplies.
Yeah.
Any of these things can fail. And if you haven't been really good about backing up your data,
Uh-oh.
you could be facing data loss.
And data loss, I mean, that's got to be like a business owner's worst nightmare, right?
Absolutely.
And probably data recovery services are not cheap either.
No, not at all.
Okay, so we've got those two. Anything else?
Then you've got the security nightmare that comes with running outdated servers.
Right.
Think about it. Every day, new security vulnerabilities pop up, and hackers are constantly figuring out how to exploit them. So it's like you're trying to protect your castle with like a wooden fence and a rusty sword.
Yeah, not great.
You need the latest security patches
Right.
to stay protected. But the problem is these old servers, they can't even run them.
Oh, wow.
So they're left wide open to attacks.
So that's a big problem.
Huge problem. A cyber attack can cripple a business.
Right.
Stolen data, financial losses, your reputation's damaged. It's devastating.
Okay, so it's more than just a tech headache. This is a serious business risk.
Big time.
Okay. Is there anything else, any other hidden dangers lurking in these old servers?
Oh, yeah. let's not forget about that energy-guzzling monster in the corner.
Ah, okay.
Old servers are so power inefficient. So
Right.
it's like you're driving a gas-guzzling Hummer when you could be in a fuel-efficient electric car.
Okay.
Newer servers are designed with energy efficiency in mind,
Yeah.
but those old dinosaurs, they're just sucking power and driving up your electric bill.
So not only is it a ticking time bomb for data and security, it's also like secretly
Yeah.
draining your budget
Draining your budget with energy costs.
with those, yeah, with high energy bill. So I'm starting to think that those cost savings of keeping an old server are kind of an illusion.
Totally an illusion.
Yeah.
But wait, there's more. We got to talk about compatibility issues.
Oh, okay.
Software is always evolving, right? It's becoming more and more complex and demanding.
Sure.
And you might be thinking, well, hey, I'm not running the latest, greatest, craziest software.
Right.
But even simple updates can be a problem.
Yeah, I've run into that where, I try to run a new program on an old computer
It
and
doesn't work.
it just doesn't work.
Exactly. Remember our T320? Even updating the BIOS, which should be a routine thing,
Right.
turned into a disaster.
Wow.
The hardware couldn't handle it.
Wow.
And that extends to the operating system, applications, everything.
Okay, so I'm starting to get the picture here that, it might seem like a budget-friendly option to stick with these old servers,
Right.
but it's actually a really big gamble,
It is a gamble.
potentially with some pretty disastrous consequences.
Yes. So before we move on to what you can actually do about this,
Right.
I want you to understand how serious this is.
Yeah.
This T320 breakdown wasn't just a tech glitch. It was a symptom of a much larger problem,
Okay.
a problem that could be lurking in businesses right now.
All right, well, you've given me a lot to think about for sure.
Good.
Now I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed. I'm like, what are we going to do about all of this?
We're going to talk about it.
Okay, good.
There's a lot you can do.
All right, good.
Don't worry.
All right. All right, so we've seen the dangers, right?
Yeah.
Lurking in these old servers. But now I'm kind of wondering, like, what can we actually do about it? What are the solutions here?
So the good news is that even though the risks are serious, there are steps you can take to protect your business. And it all starts with just taking a hard look at your IT infrastructure.
Okay.
Like, you take inventory of your pantry before you go grocery shopping.
Right, got to see what you've got.
You got to know what you're working with. So take inventory of your servers. How old are they? What model?
Right.
What's their support status? What are they being used for? Are they mission critical?
Right.
Are they holding sensitive data? Once you have a clear picture, then you can start prioritizing.
Okay, so those servers that are nearing their EOL date, those are like the big red flags.
Those are the red flags for sure. Top of the list for upgrades or replacements.
Okay.
And don't forget about virtual machines. Even if you virtualized your environment,
Yeah.
the hardware still matters.
Yeah. Okay.
So if those VMs are running on outdated servers,
Right.
they're vulnerable too.
So it's like, building a fancy house on a shaky foundation.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter how nice the house is if the foundation crumbles.
Yeah, yeah. No, before we even talk about upgrades, we got to talk about something essential. Your
Yeah.
backup strategy.
Oh, okay.
Think of this as your insurance policy
Right.
against data loss.
Seriously, if there's one thing our listeners take away from this whole deep dive,
Yeah,
it's backups, backups, backups.
absolutely. Back up everything and make sure those backups are stored off-site or in a secure cloud environment.
Okay.
Right. Because if your server goes down and your backups are on that server,
Right, then what's the point?
what was the point? Right.
Yeah.
It's like keeping your spare car key in the glove compartment of the car that you just lost.
Right, yeah, exactly.
It makes no sense.
No.
And don't just set it and forget it. You got to test these backups
Oh,
regularly to make sure that they can actually be restored.
right.
Because it's terrible to think you're protected only to find out your backups are corrupted when you need them.
Yeah. Okay, so backups, check. What's next on our survival checklist?
All right, next up, let's talk about security. Because keeping your servers secure, especially these older ones, is like a constant battle.
Yeah.
But it's a battle you can win with the right strategies in place. So think about it like this. You wouldn't just have one lock on your front door
Right.
to protect your house, right? You'd have multiple layers. You'd have strong door, an alarm system, maybe even a guard dog.
Right. Okay, so multiple layers of defense.
Multiple layers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Strong firewalls, those are a must. Think of that as your front line of defense, blocking that unauthorized access.
Okay.
You get intrusion detection systems. They're always monitoring for suspicious activity. They let you know if there's a problem. And of course, you need good antivirus software
Of course, yeah.
to stop those malware infections.
But, technology, it's only part of the story, right? What about the human element?
You're so right. That's where user education is so important. because you can have the best security in the world,
Right.
but one click on a phishing email
Uh-oh.
can take the whole thing down.
So it's about training the people.
Yeah. Train your team, security best practices,
Mm.
teach them about phishing scams, how to use strong passwords, and just the importance of being careful, because it's not just building walls, it's also about making sure the guards are ready.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So all of this upgrading, the security, all of this, it sounds expensive. How do we get buy-in from, like the management?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you got to become a translator. You
Mm.
got to translate technical risks into real-world business impact.
Okay.
Don't just talk about security patches and firewalls. Talk about what happens if sensitive customer data gets stolen.
Oh, right.
Paint a picture. What could happen?
Yeah.
Explain how downtime equals lost revenue, that their reputation could be damaged. Put a dollar figure on what it costs to recover from a cyber attack. When you frame the conversation in terms of business value and risk mitigation, it's a much easier sell.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So let's say you've gotten the green light for upgrades.
Yep.
Where do you even begin? Replacing servers, I mean, that sounds like a huge task.
It can feel that way,
Yeah.
but with careful planning and the right strategy, it doesn't have to be a nightmare.
Okay.
Think of it like renovating your kitchen.
Okay.
Sure, it's disruptive for a while, but the end result is a beautiful, functional space.
Right. I like that. All right, so where do we start with this server renovation project?
Well, first you got to choose the right hardware,
Right.
right? And that depends on your needs and budget. But in general, you want servers that are energy efficient,
Yeah.
scalable, and have really good security features built right in.
And vendor support.
Oh, and vendor support. We learned that with the T320.
Yeah.
You want a vendor with a really good reputation
For sure.
for providing timely, reliable support, like having a trusted mechanic
Yeah.
for your IT. Once you have the hardware, plan out that migration process,
Okay.
transferring all the data, all the applications, all the user settings from the old to the new.
And a lot of testing, I imagine.
Lots and lots of testing. Don't rush that step. Thorough testing is key. But, what if replacing everything just isn't in the budget right now?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Not every business can afford to just rip and replace everything.
Right. So there are ways to reduce the risk. One option is virtualization.
Okay, what is virtualization again? Remind me.
Okay, so instead of having a ton of physical servers,
Yeah.
you create virtual servers on a smaller number of more powerful machines.
Right, so it's like consolidating everything.
Yeah, like you're organizing your stuff.
Yeah.
Instead of having it scattered all over the place, you're getting it nice and organized.
I like that.
Virtualization can give new life to your existing hardware.
Oh, okay.
It can make them easier to manage
Right.
and more secure. It's a great way to get more out of what you already have.
That's good. Are there any other alternatives?
Oh yeah, cloud computing.
Right, of course.
That has become really popular
Yeah.
for
yeah.
businesses of all sizes. And for good reason.
Right, so that's where you're essentially renting the servers from a third party. Right.
That's right. Instead of having to manage your own, you're relying on the cloud provider's massive infrastructure and expertise. Like you're outsourcing your IT department to a bunch of specialists.
Okay, that sounds pretty appealing, especially for like smaller businesses, right?
Okay.
Who might not have like dedicated IT staff. But what are some things to consider before going to the cloud?
That's a great question. So migrating to the cloud is not just a one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
You got to really figure out what you need, choose the right provider, and make sure everything will work in that cloud environment.
Right.
So it's not as simple as just picking a provider and hitting upload.
Right.
There's a lot more to it than that.
Okay.
You got to think about security, compliance, cost, all that.
Mhm.
But for a lot of businesses, the benefits like scalability, the flexibility, the cost savings, and that enhanced security can outweigh those challenges.
All right, so we've seen a whole range of solutions,
Yeah.
from server replacement, virtualization, to the cloud. But before we move on, what would you say is the key takeaway here?
Proactive planning. Don't wait until disaster strikes. Take inventory,
Yeah.
figure out your risk,
Yeah.
have a plan. That can make all the difference. It's like having a fire escape plan.
Yeah.
You hope you never have to use it,
Yeah.
but you got to be prepared.
Got to be ready. Yeah.
And, there's no right answer. What you do depends on the business.
Yeah.
But whether you're upgrading, virtualizing, or going to the cloud, the key is to take action
Right.
before it's too late.
Okay, I'm feeling much more informed now, for sure. But there's one more thing before we wrap up that we have to address. We've talked a lot about the technology, but what about the people?
Yeah.
Stay tuned for part 3, where we talk all about the human side of server management.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're back, and we've talked a lot about the technology side of things
Right.
with these old servers.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the people, right?
Yeah.
The human element, because that's a big part of this too.
Absolutely. It's easy to focus on the hardware and the software.
Yeah.
But in the end, the technology is only as good as the people running it.
Because even with, the best firewalls and the backups in the world,
Yeah.
a single mistake by a human
It's all over.
can just bring the whole thing down.
Right. So that's why it's so important
Yeah.
to have a culture of continuous learning on your IT team.
Right. So we're talking about things like training programs, professional development,
Absolutely.
maybe even sending people to like conferences, workshops, things like that.
All of that. Give your team the resources they need to stay up to date
Yeah.
on all the latest, best practices, the new technologies, the security threats, all that.
Because the technology is always changing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a team that's informed is going to be way more effective and confident.
Right. And it's not just about like the hard technical skills, is it?
Yeah.
I mean, things like communication and problem solving
Yeah.
and teamwork. I mean, these are essential too.
Huge,
Yeah.
especially when you're dealing with like a high stress situation, like when a server crashes.
Right. Because it's not just an IT problem at that point, right?
No, it's a business problem.
It affects the whole business.
And your team needs to be able to talk to everyone, explain what's happening
Right.
in a way that everyone understands, and then work together to fix it fast.
Right. So they got to be able to handle like the technical stuff,
Right.
the human stuff, especially during a crisis.
Exactly.
Okay. So another thing that I think we should talk about is documentation.
Oh, yeah.
And I know it doesn't sound super exciting,
No.
but good documentation can really save you.
Huge.
Yeah.
Think about it. A server goes down. The only person who knows how it works is on vacation.
Uh-oh.
If there's no documentation,
Right.
the rest of the team is in trouble.
Yeah.
They're going to be scrambling trying to figure it all out.
So it's like a roadmap
Yeah, it's a roadmap.
to your IT infrastructure, right?
Mhm. Exactly. It makes sure that everyone understands how things work, even if they didn't set it up.
Okay, so documentation is definitely something that we shouldn't skip.
No, it's super important. It keeps things running, makes
Yeah.
troubleshooting easier. Plus, a lot of industries require it for compliance.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So, yeah, don't skimp on documentation.
Okay, so we talked about documentation, we talked about training. Is there anything else on the human side that we should keep in mind?
We got to talk about stress management.
Right.
IT professionals, they're under so much pressure to keep everything running.
Yeah,
And when a server goes down, it is stressful.
I bet, yeah. It's kind of like being an air traffic controller, right?
Exactly. One mistake and it's disaster.
A huge problem.
So it's super important to create a work environment that's healthy and supports people.
Yeah,
Encourage breaks.
yeah.
Promote work-life balance. Make sure people have access to resources like employee assistance programs, things like that.
Right, so it's about preventing burnout, making sure that people feel comfortable asking for help if
Absolutely.
they need it.
Exactly. And, never underestimate the power of just saying thank you.
Right.
IT professionals, they often work behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Nobody really sees what they do.
Yeah, they're like the stage crew for a play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they're essential. So take the time to acknowledge their hard work,
Yeah,
celebrate the big wins, and even the little ones.
Right.
Just say thank you.
it goes a long way.
It really does.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of aging servers,
Yes,
let's remember that while technology is, obviously a huge part of this,
it is.
the human element
Yeah,
is just as important.
absolutely.
So invest in your team, build a good, supportive work environment,
Yes.
and never underestimate the power of communication, documentation,
Yeah.
and a little gratitude.
Right. Because it's the people who really make all the difference.
Yeah. A strong, supported team, that's your best defense against those ticking time bombs.
Absolutely. And that's going to help keep your IT infrastructure running smoothly.
All right, so that's it for today's deep dive. We hope you've learned a lot.
Yes.
And you have some, good takeaways to help you manage those aging servers.
For sure.
Remember, proactive planning,
Yeah.
focusing on the human side of things.
Absolutely.
Those are the keys to success.
Absolutely.
Until next time, happy server managing.